Tonight, we are having a special conversation between myself and Marcus Winters. Marcus was a former student of mine way back in the day. So he wrote me up a little bio. I'll tell you about him. Marcus was born in 1992 in Richmond, Virginia. So he's young. His father was Reverend David Winters. His mother was Dorothy Winters. He is one of 7 children. Has a twin brother, Maxwell, who lives here in San Antonio. And his earliest memories are that of worshiping Jesus at Living Word Baptist Church with his family. After graduating from high school, he attended Howard University and he majored in political science. Upon leaving college, Marcus enlisted in the United States Air Force and serves as an executive flight aide to the Vice President of the United States, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, the First Lady of the United States, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Currently, with his job, he's traveled to 79 countries in 6 continents. He told me he did not go to Antarctica yet. That'll be his next trip, I'm sure.
Hope not. No desire to go.
A little cold. Hang out with the penguins.
Maybe. We'll see.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Marcus. Marcus and I have known each other for like 17 years now. He was like 11 when I met him, and now you're 28. That's been a long time. He was just a little middle schooler, but he was a very bright middle schooler. I remember that. He was very intelligent, and he's here to share with us a little bit about himself. So why don't we start out with just, Marcus, why don't you share with us, just tell us about growing up. What was your family like? Maybe a little bit about your spiritual heritage, things that shaped you to be who you are today.
Oh, definitely. First of all, thank you all for coming. I feel very blessed to have this opportunity to speak to you all, and I really don't feel worthy of this, but Dave has been awesome, and he's reached out to me, and so the least I could do for such a long-time friend is help him out here tonight. So yeah, about me, like my bio said, I'm one of 7 children. My mother actually had 2 sets of twins. I was in the final set of twins. So yeah, I know, I saw all the faces. I don't know how she did it either, but so I grew up in a large family household. We weren't rich. We didn't have a lot of money. We were pretty actually on the poorer side, but we had such a love in our household that it was just incredible. So I never knew we were poor until like I left the house. So my dad was a pastor, who really couldn't act up. I had to stay on the straight and narrow. And as far as spiritual heritage, my dad was one of 12 children, and 3, my dad and 2 other uncles were also preachers. So I grew up in a very church-oriented family, whether it was Sunday services or Wednesday night services. I was always in church. And so growing up, I was always attuned to my faith and what I was brought up to believe. And that shaped me and molded me into the man I became.
All right. Well, excellent. Well, so tell us a little bit about growing up in Richmond, Virginia. Maybe, as many people know, was the capital of the Confederacy. And I remember living there and just being kind of overwhelmed with, I grew up, I'm a Northerner, I'm from Philadelphia, so was a little, I don't know, amazed or confused by all of the things I saw there at times. So tell us about that, maybe what it was like, what maybe some of the struggles you've dealt with, and all of that.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that other than being the capital of the Confederacy, a lot of people don't really see Virginia as the South anymore. Mm-hmm. It's very funny when you look at maps, the way they depict the South. It starts at like North Carolina and goes down now. For some reason, they forget Virginia had a very big part in the Confederacy and in the Jim Crow era as well. But growing up, I mean, Monument Avenue was a fixture with all the Confederate statues and things like that. And when I was younger, I didn't really really see it as, anything other than just statues because I was young.
Mhm.
But my dad, who was born in 1937, he hated driving down Monument Avenue because it didn't make sense to him. The glorification of Confederate, generals. It didn't feel, you know, like they should be there. And you look at the population of the city, the people that actually live in the city, it's actually, predominantly black, whereas people who are not black live in the suburbs. They've all moved out into the nicer areas around the city. So when you look back and you think about it, the people who have to view these statues and these monuments are
Mhm.
people of color who probably would not have been, uh, welcomed by the people depicted in these statues.
Mhm.
So it's a very weird, position we were placed in. And as I got older and as I became a little bit more, uh, became a lover of history, I started to question, why is Virginia the way it is? Why do we still, have these statues that, depict those that actually lost the war,
Mhm.
and there were no statues around of anybody who won.
Mhm.
And but you start to see uh, that it does have an impact on what you think about yourself,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the fact that these men can be glorified, but then when they finally make a statue of Arthur Ashe way in the corner, turn the opposite direction of these Confederate generals. And so, yes, we got one statue, but I have to drive past what 5 or 6 to find this one statue. So Richmond it's a city that's starting to slowly come out of some entrenched uh, social racism, social depictions of what uh, the city wanted to be at that time.
Gotcha. Wow. So yeah, so it was those struggles growing up there, I guess, as you got older to just kind of take that in and just kind of process that. So as you got a little older, what were some of your like maybe your thoughts and reactions towards some of that?
Uh, the biggest thing that really hurt is that people always go, and it's understandable. I mean, a lot of people can trace their ancestry back to maybe those who fought in the Civil War and who participated. So maybe they see it as some kind of heritage, something that they need to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with remembering these things. And a lot of people think if you tear the statues down, the history is erased.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the case. The Titanic's at the bottom of the ocean. We still remember it existed.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that will take that from you. But I think things in now today's society, we need to put them in the proper place.
Mm-hmm.
And in museums, you can have museums and things like that to have that kind of respect.
Mm-hmm.
But when your heritage is built upon the subjugation of a whole population of people,
Mm-hmm.
I, I, I have to question, is your heritage something that should be honored at that point?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, it's they may have been family, they may have been anything, but you don't see statues of Hitler in Germany. You
Mm-hmm.
don't see
Right.
Heinrich Himmler statues in Germany. You don't see swastikas in Germany anymore
Mm-hmm.
because they're in museums. They're where they need to
Right.
be. You're literally forcing uh, people who are actually treasonous
Mm-hmm.
and putting statues up for them, and then telling society that we should revere this person who would have preferred me to remain enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got older, I could no longer, especially being in certain schools I went to that were predominantly white, I couldn't rectify that situation. I couldn't excuse that thought anymore because it's a dangerous thought and it leads down a slope of denial of what
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Right.
I think at this point this country's in a reckoning of what happened, and we have to
Mm-hmm.
own it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's go back a little bit to your time in middle school when we got to spend these times together. And so you were part of your family's church, the church that your dad was the pastor at, and yet you started attending a different youth group. You started attending the youth group at the church that where I was working, mostly I guess because your neighbor was the pastor of our church and his daughter invited you to be a part of our group. I remember that. So what was that like? Well, can you maybe compare those experiences, those two experiences of being, predominantly a part of a black church, but then attending a youth ministry of a white church, and maybe some of the interesting dichotomies that came up out of those two?
Yes. So I it's funny. We all know black church and white church, two different things,
Mhm.
but they're actually not that different. But I'm used to the maybe a little bit louder, a little bit more shouting and jumping around, a little bit of that. And so when I was invited to your youth group at the time, I was a little skeptical. I was like, it's gonna be weird. I don't know what they do over there, because my idea is that white church just sings their hymns, sing a few hymns, have their little 15-minute sermon, and out the door,
Yes.
because the white church near our church always was, they came before us and they were gone by the time we got out. So
Yeah.
I thought they were pretty quick. But we didn't really have a strong youth group at my father's church, because he had 7 kids. We made up the youth group. So it was like he didn't want to just teach his own kids. I was like, I can do that at home. I don't need to have a whole group devoted to having someone else teach my children. So it was good, and I think he believed it was necessary that I go experience, but he was a little leery that it was a white church at the time. He was like, he was a little worried about how it would go over. So I met Dave, and I went. Excuse me, phone. So I went with him, and then I felt a little out of place at first, because my brother and I, we were the only black kids there, and so I was trying to fit in, find out how I fit in, how I make my mark. But everybody was so loving and accepting, and they just took me right in, started joking with me, and I was like, this is pretty great. And as I started listening to the things that Dave was teaching, I'm like, this is the same stuff we're saying. Like, this is exactly what we're saying. There's no difference. Maybe maybe he's not saying it as loud and as boisterous as a black pastor would say it, but it's the exact same thing. We're worshiping the same God in the same way, and in truth, and and it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed, because I was, at the time, I was young. I was like thinking to myself, do I really believe what I believe? Or do I believe it because my father is my pastor and he told me to believe it? And after hearing it from Dave, the way he spoke about it, and the way he presented Jesus to me, and the way he expanded my own thinking and my faith, I realized that no, I actually believe it for myself, and it is truth. And now I feel comfortable spreading it to others, because if you don't believe something is truth, you're not going to necessarily go start talking to other people about Jesus. You're not going to. You have to believe it for yourself and have seen it work for you, and then you can go witness and be an effective witness to others. So, and that's what Dave did for me.
And so how has that helped you, maybe as you've gotten older, that experience? How's that caused you, like, in your faith and your journey with other Christians of different races? And
I'm not scared to approach them anymore. I'm not scared to, I can look past the differences. And the differences are so superficial after a certain point. I mean, we have so many denominations of Christianity at this point, and we focus on those differences that cause those denominations instead of the things that actually draw us together in Christ. And if we focused on those a little bit more, I feel like we could go a lot further, and help communities out a lot better. And so it's caused me to grow and be able to just talk to people, just approach people, and just talk about God, about Jesus, and things like that. And I don't think I necessarily would have done that had I not gone to that youth group. I probably would have stayed in the black church sector, comfortable, and would not have grown the way I have to grow. And that's what it did for me.
That's awesome. I'll give you this one chance to share any embarrassing story about me before we move on. Do you have anything?
You took a tumble during that Thanksgiving football game. That was pretty cool. That was pretty funny. But I don't think you did anything necessarily too embarrassing. And if you did, I'll keep those stories for myself.
That's good. That's good. That's why I don't do Thanksgiving football games anymore. Yes. So when I left, you were about to enter high school. So maybe tell us a little bit about maybe some of your high school experience and as you started attending Howard University as well, maybe some of those experiences that shaped you during high school and college.
So high school was a little difficult. When you left, it kind of created a little void. So I didn't have that, that Wednesday night, midweek, power up to get me through. So, I started playing in the band and things like that. So I had stuff that preoccupied me and took up my time. But high school was pretty, for the most part, I was pretty lost as an individual because you're coming into being a young man. You think you know everything in the world. Your parents don't matter anymore because you're smart, and you're just being a rebel. And I kind of turned into a little bit of a rebel. And my dad was, a lot older. He had me when he was 55. So my dad was already in his, 60s going towards 70 at the time. So, it's like, Dad, everything you say is old and it doesn't matter anymore. And blah, blah, blah. And he's like, nope, the game's still the same. You're just playing it now, not me. So I graduated from high school and I decided to go to Howard University, which is a historically Black college. My dad attended Howard University, so he had a lot of friends up there and a lot of people he knew would look out for me. And I'm not saying he helped me get in. Trust me, I had the grades. But so I decided to go, and I think it was I realized how much I did not know about my own culture and being African American and our advancements in this country. I started realizing a lot of what is taught to us in schools is caused. There's so much that has been, unfortunately, and I hate to use the term, and I know it might make people uncomfortable, but a lot of things have been whitewashed. A lot of African American inventors and things have been overlooked and in favor of, white Americans and the founding fathers and things like that. We don't talk about Crispus Attucks. We don't talk about people of that nature anymore. Black History Month, you get your three: Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and that's about as far as we're gonna go. We won't talk about anybody else. And at Howard, we started learning about these things. It wasn't any more Harriet Tubman. We went into a lot of other people like W.E.B. Du Bois and characters like that. I mean, yes, you had your George Washington Carver, but it was so much more. And I started feeling upset that I was led to believe, that the founding fathers were the end all be all, the moral compass that this country should follow. And, we revered Jefferson, yet he had a Black woman hidden in a hidden room beside his bedroom. And a lot of people don't know that. And fathered children by her, but now we're just now coming to the reckoning of that. So I felt like going to an all Black college allowed me to explore myself without outside influences, protruding in. And that's not to say, I don't respect the founding of the country and the figures that have made America what it is. It just let me see that the African American story doesn't just start and end with slavery. We were as much as an integral part of the founding of this country as anyone else was, and that we should be promoted and seen as such. So that's
definitely. And then, so what were you studying there? I know was that your major, or was that?
So political science was my major, and I was going for a minor in history, but I decided to get rid of the minor in history. I didn't want to write any more papers, so I was like, we'll go with political science. That's good enough for me.
Nice. And what was your ambition with studying political science?
So I had the idea that I was gonna run for office at some community type level, and just one neighborhood at a time, just change my area. Because I mean, there's always the I want to be president dream, but I never wanted that. I feel like more good is done in your local area, where you can have the impact on people really, and actually, have that ground level impact. but I've since kind of changed a little bit from
Mhm.
that, because I am so much of politics becomes corrupted to the point where you almost have to sell your soul just to get elected. And
Mhm.
I would never want to be leashed by
Mhm.
some other interest group or some kind of lobby or anything.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to, I would want to do it myself for the right reasons.
Mhm.
Uh, and I feel like we don't get the change we want sometimes because
Mhm.
of those outside influences. So um, if I do some kind of community organizing, it'll probably be church based. It'll probably be something more like that. But I don't. I think the political aspirations have
Mhm.
died at this point.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when you were when I knew you had that very political mind. Even then, I know like you reminded my older brother was like that too. You guys just you think politics, and I know that for me that's a hard thing. Like I'm not a political minded person. I think only recently have I become a little bit more just aware. I think some of that was because my brother was so political, like so politically minded. It just turned me off, you know.
Yeah.
So but I think, it's taken me this long to really start thinking, okay, well, there is we need to start be engaging more politically and all that. And so,
Definitely.
yeah. But so after leaving, Howard, you enrolled in the Air Force. Is that enlisted? Probably should say,
Yes.
not enrolled. So tell us. So why did you enlist in the Air Force, and maybe what was your hope in that?
So again, my dad also served in the Air Force, so that was a good factor. And it was just hard to get a job. It was really hard to get a job. And the Air Force was something I knew I could do. It was something that my family is a big military family. So I said, I can't. Me and my dad were going through that. I'm a grown man. He's a grown man. We're both living in the same house.
Mhm.
I'm trying to do what I want to do. And I just finally had to talk with him. I said, Dad, we can't, I gotta go become a man for myself now.
Mhm.
I can't stay under this roof and I don't want to disrespect you and try to buck your rules, but I'm at the age where I want to go make my own rules.
Mhm.
And he was all for it. He said, sure, good, go and explore. I had to do the same thing. So that's what I did. And my goal was really just to do 4 years,
Mhm.
get a little money in my pocket, explore, see the world. And
Mhm.
then I guess God took over from there, and it just
Yeah,
totally started going a different direction.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, one of the things that I find cool is this. I mean, even though you talk about wanting to distance yourself from your father, you also wanted to emulate him in a lot of ways. He went to Howard and you went to Howard. He was in the Air Force and you joined the Air Force. And, fatherhood is a big issue for me because my father was barely in the picture. And I know and there's a lot of people who struggle with that. So, and I know, unfortunately, that's even a bigger issue in the Black community.
Yes.
So maybe it's just share with us a little bit, maybe like a little bit more about how your father, what impacted your life just a little bit, and maybe how maybe you saw that play out with some of your other friends who maybe didn't have strong father figures.
Uh, exactly. It is an issue in the Black community, unfortunately, and a lot of that is due to personal choices by those fathers, but a lot of that is due to some systemic issues that this country has that unfairly jails Black men
Mm-hmm.
more than other races, and that's something we do have to deal with. But as for my father, he was always there from the beginning. I mean, maybe he was just too old to go anywhere. I always used to joke with him about that. But I mean, even at 65, when I was 10, he was outside running and playing with us every day, making sure he showed up to everything that he could possibly show up to. He was just the best. Um, he would pop up when I didn't expect him to pop up, and that was always a great thing. Like I'd be playing like a band competition. I'd be like, man, everybody else's parents are there, and then I'd look over and see this guy just in a little hat in the corner, and then he just point at me like, yeah, I made it, and and that just make my day. But he was always there. He
Mm-hmm.
tried to play video games even though he was terrible at it. Like whatever we were into, he
Mm-hmm.
would at least try to
That's cool.
be into it. Like I thought I was going to be a scientist when I was a child, and he like brought me a chemistry set randomly one day. And
Nice.
then I dyed the carpet on accident, and then that was the end of the chemistry set. But he always encouraged us to do whatever we wanted to do, but he always made us promise him one thing, that if we did try to do something, we'd do it with everything we had,
Mhm.
and never hold anything back, because he was like, you'll never know if you really can do it if you're timid. So we made that promise all the time to him, and I tried to keep it. But for my peers who didn't have fathers, you could tell it. They were, and a lot of people think these kids were just bad because they didn't have fathers. No, a lot of times these kids were bad because they didn't have any authority figure in their life, and they were constantly searching for it. A lot of people think kids are bad because they want to be bad, and they're not. A lot of times they're acting out because they don't have anybody to care for them or be there for them in that way. And sometimes they lash out because that's the only attention. A lot, and I still see it with some of my friends I grew up with who haven't achieved the things that they are capable of because they have been held back by that hurt and that pain of not having a father to care about them. And some of them have kids now, and unfortunately some of them are following that same trend. My dad wasn't there for me, and I think I turned out fine, so my kid will be fine as well. And unfortunately that's a consequence of not having strong fatherhood in the house. So
Yeah. And that's I know from personally, that's a tough experience, not having a father around, and then trying to father yourself. Then it's like trying to figure out the example of who to follow. I'm thankful for having other strong men in life that have helped me. But so one of the things I know we hear about a lot now is that Black children the parents have the talk with them, right? And when I think about, when I hear the words "the talk," I'm thinking that's about sex, right? I mean, that's, I think I've had the talk with my kids. But what we understand now is that the talk for a Black family is different. Tell us, did your parents have the talk with you, and what was that like?
he did. Of course, we had the birds and the bees talk as well. We had that talk, but then we also, Black families have to have a second talk, and a lot of people don't know about it, but we do. I only had one sister, so she kind of got left out of this talk. But my dad would gather all the boys together, and he'd tell us a few things. He'd say, there are going to be people in this world who aren't going to like you simply because you're Black, and you're going to have to deal with that. And be kind, be courteous, but you're going to have to deal with it, because that has not gone away in my time. I'm sure it's not going to go away in yours. The second thing was that you're going to have to be 10 times better than any white person that does the same thing you're doing, because sometimes people will simply hire that guy because he's white and you're Black, and it's just going to be that way. And so you're going to have to be the cream of the crop to make sure that you get hired. And then when you do get that position, you're going to have to work 10 times harder to keep it, because people might be looking for a reason why you're doing a bad job or anything. And then it was, these are the neighborhoods you can't go into, that you don't need to be around. If a cop does pull you over, you do everything they tell you to do, no matter what it is, and you say yes sir, no sir, no matter what they're doing to you, because it's literally life or death for you, maybe. And there are cops out there, not all, there are some great cops out here doing great work, but there are a few who will look for any excuse to say that you've done anything. And then one of the last things he'd say was, make sure you dress in a non-threatening way. And that's sad to think that, what is dressing in a threatening way? But he would always tell me, when you go out in public, don't wear sweatpants, don't wear hoodies, don't wear anything that's oversized. Make yourself as nice and kind looking as you possibly can, so no one can doubt or have any intentions of what you're there to do. And that's sad. I mean, I can, to think I can't go get a sandwich, without having to dress in a polo and some jeans, So, but that was the talk, and we had it multiple times.
And did you find it to be true?
I did, and it has come true for me, personally.
Gotcha. So tell us a little bit more about your military experience, some of the things you've done within the Air Force, whatever you can tell us.
So I started my career as a load master. So I would load up Army guys and drop them out of the back of my plane, or do cargo airdrops and things like that, or some cool little nighttime operations that I won't get into. But Yeah, but then they built a new airplane that didn't need my crew position anymore. Or at least it only needed one of me, and we used to fly with two guys like me. So I was told I was fired
Hmm.
and that I had to find a new job. So supervisor, a very kind guy, came up to me. He said, "Man, I know a job that I think you'd really be good for, and it's not as rough and tough as this job, but I think you'd be really good for it."
Mhm.
So he gave me all the information I needed. I did the package for it, and then I got called to Washington D.C. to do an interview. And I did the interview. I thought I did great, and they were
Mhm.
like, "No, man, you're too young." So they said no to me.
Hmm.
So I decided to go for another job, got hired for that job. So I'm driving on my way out to Arizona, actually Nevada, and I was in Arizona.
Mhm.
And I got a call back from DC, and they said, "You know what? We changed our minds. We want to hire you." I said, "Oh, that's great. Only a few thousand miles the wrong direction now." Uh, and they said, "Well, go, pull over real quick. We'll get everything figured out." Stayed in the rest area for 2 hours, and then they called me back. They said, "Hey, man, go back to Little Rock, Arkansas, and wait." Drive back to Little Rock, Arkansas. By the time I got there, um, they were like, "Yeah, you've got orders to go to DC."
Wow.
So and that's how I got the job I have now, where I work
Mhm.
with the vice president and
Mhm.
other key leaders and help them do
Yeah,
the they need.
that's cool. Um, so one of the things I've heard people saying recently is that the military has done a great job in diversifying. That there's you know so what would you say to that? And would you say that's true? Would you say there's yeah? How would you respond to that?
The military in itself is going to be diverse because they're pulling from all walks of life and everyone around the country. And of course, you're going to get your kids from every walk of life. You're going to get inner city
Mhm.
people. You're going to get country boys. You're going to get your guys from the Midwest, a bunch of Texans, and they're going to let you know that they're there. Um, but to say the military has done a great job with diversity, not so much.
Mhm.
Um, in the 10 years I'll have by the time I finish, in the 8.5 I've been in, I've never had anyone but a white commander. I've
Mhm.
always had white supervisors. I've always had white section chiefs. Um, there have been black members promoted to positions in those areas, but there's always been someone above them
Mhm.
to be the real lead. And
Mhm.
so I think that's what at least the Air Force, I can't speak for the other branches,
Mhm.
but we did just uh, confirm our first African American 4-star general to be the head of the Air Force. So that's a positive step forward. But really, it starts at the organizational level. I mean, in the Air Force, you really don't talk to the chief of the Air Force that much.
Mhm.
I mean, you're going to talk to your commanders.
Mhm.
So I've never had anything but white commanders my whole time in. I only had 2 black pilots the whole time I've been flying here. They've only
Mhm.
hired one at the squadron I'm at now,
Mhm.
out of like a bunch of applicants. So that's the stuff you kind of have to look at and
Mhm.
wonder, are these people really not qualified, or is there
Mhm.
a problem with our selection process? But
Right.
that's something we deal with. And I think the military may be better off than America as a whole right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I do think we still have some ways to go for some fairness and equality to take place.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Gotcha. So with that, was you thinking about what's going on in America, especially these, we could talk about the history there, but then what's really come to a head, I would say, over the past few months with people just kind of becoming more aware of the systemic racism in our country and with the tragic deaths of Aubrey and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and so many others. Tell me what's been your reaction to all this? Maybe your initial reactions and maybe what's God's been speaking in your heart in the midst of all of this.
Yeah. So what's difficult about being African American in America, and then also working in a predominantly white workplace and things of that nature, is that I don't have the luxury of expressing my emotions all the time on certain issues, because so many people around me may feel differently because this doesn't affect them. Um, for me, it was actually there was no surprise.
Mhm.
And that's the sad part. It seems to happen so frequently now that I'm no longer, I'm almost desensitized to it.
Mhm.
And that I'm upset. I'm upset beyond, beyond measure about it. But it's been a revolving door. And so when it happened, uh, my first thoughts were, uh, is this country ready for what's about to happen because of it? And so we have, the protests and you have to, deal with that as it is. And then you have the looting, which isn't a part of the protesting at all. Those are just people taking advantage of a protest that's meant for good reasons. But my first question was, and like we were talking about, was where's the church in all of this, with having churches on every corner. But when these things happen, we tend to be quiet.
Mhm.
You don't hear churches saying anything.
Mhm.
We'll still go to church on Sunday, shut ourselves up,
Mhm.
praise God, hallelujah, have a great week. While in our communities, there's so much, unrest and, and hurt. And and I feel like this would be a great time for us to step up. And that's what God has really been saying to me. It's like,
Mhm.
where are my people at this point? Like
Mhm.
we say all the good things while we're in service, but why aren't we practicing them when it matters at this point?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, and it's really been hurting too for that people that consider themselves Christians to say some of the things they've said on these issues. And, well, he should have, been complying. He should have done this and done that. And in George Floyd's case, well, my thing is, does a counterfeit dollar, even though it's been proven it wasn't, is that a death sentence?
Mhm.
Is that enough to warrant what was done to that man?
Mhm.
And if it was me, and for my friends that are white, I asked them, if it had been me on the ground, would you have said, just comply, or would you have helped me in that moment and been there for me? And so as an African American male, I have to think about that now when I'm at work with my white counterparts. Just like I was telling you the story and that what happened to me in Arkansas with the cops arrest. I got just to make it short for everyone. I was pulled over in the middle of the night in Arkansas, and as you know, Arkansas is a very southern state. And I was driving a nice car at the time, an Infiniti, and I got pulled over by one cop. Then two more cops showed up. As one cop was questioning me, the other two were searching in my vehicle. I politely said, sir, you can't search my vehicle, without a warrant. So is there something, you're looking for and everything? And I said, I can prove that. He said, this can't be your car. I said, oh, it can? He said, well, it's too nice. It has to be your dad's car. Did you borrow your dad's car? And I said, well, no, I didn't borrow my dad's car. And I can show you that I did not. And so I decided, I was going to reach for the glove compartment to get my registration. Bad move.
Mhm.
I was snatched out of the car, placed on my face, handcuffed, and they started searching me to make sure that, I had stolen the vehicle, because apparently now I fit the description of someone who was 6'3" and I'm 5'6". So there's no way I'm this guy.
Yeah.
But and the only thing that saved me is they looked in my wallet and had a military ID.
Mm.
Once they saw the military ID, the whole situation changed. It picked me up off the ground, dusted me off, oh yeah, man, we just got you confused with somebody else. And I'm still in a position where I have to play nice,
Yeah.
and be, oh yes, sir, I understand, I get it, your job's probably tough, and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize we go through. So when we see this stuff happening in the news as Black individuals, we say, that could have easily been me.
Mhm.
Because a lot of us have had experiences that have been just as scary. And, glory be to God that I was able to walk away from mine.
Right.
But unfortunately, this man wasn't.
Mhm.
And that's why you see the outrage that you see today.
Mhm. Yeah. So when you talk about the church's response, right? The church and how we are called, as Christians, we are called to be people who spread God's love, right? And spread the grace and understanding of God. So have you maybe there's often this understanding maybe that the black church is more socially active versus the white church. Maybe why would that be, and maybe what's the problem with that?
Well, the black church has been active as long as the black church has existed because it had to be. I mean, you think about even on the plantations and during slavery, they were allowed to have church. That was one thing they were allowed to have because the slave masters believed that Christianity would make a more docile slave. So they did have church, and they were allowed to do that. And that time, that was their only time for expression and freedom. And also they used those services as times to rally escape plans and do things like that. So the church has always been an activity point for African Americans. And then you go into the Jim Crow civil rights era, the black church has always led the way for social change. Martin Luther King, Reverend Abernathy, they all came out of the church. And so the church was always the focal meeting point in the neighborhoods and communities. So it was the logical place for all these activities to take place. So the black church's history and the history of black people has made it a necessity that the church be active, because without it, really African Americans haven't achieved much without it. So I think that's why that is.
And so then, what do you see as, what should the church's response be now? What should, maybe as a multicultural church, like churches of all cultures, especially in America, as we sit here and trying to figure out what's going on and how to respond, what should be the Christian response, the church's response?
One, I think everybody has to search themselves and look at the issue, things that are happening, and ask yourself, would you be okay if it was happening to you? And would God be pleased by what's happening? And once you answer those questions, I think we have to start bridging this divide between white church, black church, Lutheran, Methodist, and things like that. And stop looking at the small divisions. We all live here. We all see what's happening. And we all say we love the same God, and Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. Okay, we have a lot in common now. So since we have so much in common, you should be able to see my pain. I think it has to come through a conversation. I think if you do have friends, as I was telling you last night, if you have friends of African Americans, sit down and have the conversation. It's going to be uncomfortable. And it's not going to be fun. You might hear things that might upset you. You might hear things that make you sad. But by empathizing with someone else and gaining an understanding of what they go through, you might start to see that everything is not all beautiful in this country as we try to paint it out to be. And that America can still be great, but it can be greater. It can be better. And because for me, whether white, black, Hispanic or whatever, I can't sleep at night when I see something like that happen. It doesn't matter if that knee was on a white man's neck. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that happened to someone,
right?
Because they didn't deserve it. I don't care what crime they may have committed at that time. There was no need for that. So I think if the church and church members start having that conversation, we'll open our eyes a little bit more, and then allow God to come in and then use you in that way. Because for me, when someone like Dave speaks to me and asks, what are your experiences? How did that make you feel? It shows you that it makes me feel like they care. You care. You see me as an equal human being, and I'm just as valuable as you are. And you think that we might be offended that you're asking? No. And I gain that trust with you, I will tell you everything because I trust you and I love you, and I see that you love me too. And I think that's what we really need is an outpouring of love and understanding right now, and we'd see change.
Yeah, I think that's one of the struggles. Growing up, I would be told you don't talk about these things because you might offend somebody. You want to just kind of just let it be. If we don't talk about it, then it almost disappears, right? We think
silence is very loud.
Yeah, and so
very loud.
So we've got this, I know we've got this voice that says, don't say anything, in our heads that we've been raised with, and so we struggle with that, we struggle with, well, we're not supposed to say anything. So what would be a good, like if you had a friend, an African American friend, and you just kind of, what would be a good maybe conversation starter?
Okay, so just to throw it out there, African Americans don't care if you call us African American or Black. Most of us don't care. It's not that big a deal. So if that's your first hang up, throw it out the window. If you're coming out of love and you really want, something to happen, just, hey, call us that, or hey, call us by our name.
Yeah.
It works either way. We're all people, so we have names too. So it works. Once you get that out of the way, just say, hey, I know there's been a lot, going on in the news today, and in the media lately, and I just want you to know that I love and I care about you. Just start simply that way. And I was wondering if there's anything, you need to get off your chest about the issue. And then once they start talking, if they feel, they'll start to trust you, they'll start talking. Once they start talking, then you go into, well, wow, have you experienced these things? Have these things happened to you? And if they tell you the things that happen, just sit. You don't have to respond, just sit and listen. That's all it takes sometimes. Just sit and listening, knowing that we have an ally, someone, that doesn't look like us, who wants to understand us. And then you'll be surprised. Now that person knows that, they have a friend, they have somebody who, they can vent to and they can feel safe venting to.
Cool.
And then you have to go home with that and then educate the ones around you. Because a lot of times, a lot of people say, well, I'm not racist. It's not me. I love all people. Well, you know that cousin of yours that doesn't.
Right.
And that's the one you need to work on. And I'm not saying everybody has a racist family member. But I mean, you have to work on and say, no, you can't say that. No, you can't do that. But I think we all need to do better with policing our friends who we let get away with saying little things here and there. And that adds up, because when I had a friend whose wife was that way. He wasn't racist at all, but his wife would say some pretty off the wall things, like, I didn't dress black, whatever that means, or you're not very black, which I don't know what that means either. But every day I look in the mirror, I'm the same shirt. But she would say things like that, and unfortunately, even though you based on the company you keep, based on the people you keep around you and the things you let them say without correcting them or saying anything, I have to judge you based on that, and for my own protection, and say that they might think that way too, because it's probably not the first time they've said that, and they're comfortable saying it around you. So for my own protection, I might have to remove myself from you because I don't want to be around that kind of thinking.
Yeah. Gotcha. So we've got here a group of, primarily middle-aged and older. Mostly of us are white men and women. What would you say to, how should we be responding after talking with somebody? Most of us, maybe especially with COVID going on and everything, protesting, maybe not be where we feel the most comfortable or feel like that's the way we want to we should express ourselves. What are some ways that we can both grow and also things that we could do? I think that's one of the things I struggle with, is like, what do I do?
Exactly. And it is difficult right now with the backdrop of COVID-19 and things like that. But one thing that we have to understand is African Americans are not here to educate you. And I know that sounds crazy because everybody wants to just ask somebody, well, what do you want? And what happened? There's Google now, and it's amazing. Like, just search, because it works. But it is tiring that every time, and I don't mind it because this is my friend Dave. I'll do it for Dave. I'll do anything for Dave. But what we don't like doing is every time this happens, we have to sit down and educate primarily white people why this affects us and why this hurts us. And then we go through this cycle of, okay, well, kumbaya needs to change. Let's do it. And we don't do anything. And we get little things that are meant to appease us or make us happy. Like painting Black Lives Matter on the street does nothing for me. it looks good. It's a great photo op. It's fine. I get it. But there's no policy change. There's nothing real in that. And if you think, as long as you go down there and, you walk in a march, you've participated, you get your little badge, you're good. That's not enough. What it takes is actual interaction, reaching out to groups that are helping. I know a lot of things in the news that said Black Lives Matter is a hate group. Go research it for yourself. Don't listen to the news. Just go research things for yourself. Right now, because we can't have the interaction, read up on some African American history. I mean, how many have we taken the time to actually read a book about, somebody that's African American or doesn't look like you? Like when's the last time you've actually tried to do that and see the other side? And then if you do have African American friends, talk to them. Just talk to them. How are you feeling this week? Any new developments? Is there something that I should be looking at that I don't know what's going on? How do I teach this to my children, my grandchildren? Like, what would you say to yours? And then the talk that my father had with me, tell your kids that their African American friends have to have that talk. Yeah. So they can be allies to their Black friends. So when their Black friends are going into neighborhoods maybe that aren't so great, you go with them and you help protect them and keep them safe. Because I had a white friend who did that for me in Arkansas. Whenever I was going to go somewhere by myself, after that cop incident, he went with me every single time. And then he saw for himself that, wow, I thought racism was over. He literally told me, he's like, I really thought it was over. You guys had Obama. Like, racism's dead. Like, Obama happened. But, and then I had to literally tell him, I was like, but we had like 200 years of white presidents too. I mean, 8 years, 200 years. I mean, kind of a little lopsided, man. But that's I think that's what we do now. And then when everything opens up, just go reach out and get into different community groups that don't look like yourself. And we'd be happy to have you. I'm telling you. Maybe one Sunday, try to go to a Black church. You will see some things, but it's a great experience. Like when I went to your church day, when I got with you guys, learned how you guys sang different songs. You guys did different things, but at the end of the day, we love the same God. We worship the same God, and the experience was still just as incredible. Yeah. So don't harden your heart to it. Just try something new. Yeah, definitely. So I think that's some great advice. So looking now, what are some of your plans for the future? Now that you've got about 1.5 years left at the Air Force. I do. So next July, I'll be. It was supposed to be this year, but COVID decided to give me some more time. So yay. So I get to be engaged a little bit longer. Nice. Hopefully, once I get out of the military, I would love to, pursue the master's in foreign relations, but also I want to do something with theology too. I kind of want to go down that route and explore, and deepen my faith a little bit more and keep growing in that direction. But hopefully buy a house too. That's on the list. In DC? No. No. They don't give you enough house for the money. Much. Most houses here start at 500,000. So do you have a place? Do you want to go back to Richmond? Or are you going to go? You know what? If the fiance has anything to do with it, we'll probably be in Illinois. But I'm pushing. I'm a Cowboys fan. I can't be in Bears country too long. I can't. Yeah. Well, then you'll have to move down here and live with your brother or something. Not too hot. I'm over it. I'm over it. Family reunions only. Yeah, I gotcha. Well, let's take a look at some of these. I don't know if anybody's got some questions for us. I got a couple here. But if anybody else has got some questions, feel free to send it our way. Let's see. Says, well, someone says they'll get your vote for president. There you go. So, no. What is it that white people don't seem to understand about the Black experience? That it exists. And that's what I'd simply boil it down to. Just because it doesn't happen to you, or you don't see it, we're all not lying. Like we're not all just making this up. Like it's real. It exists. It happens, and that we hurt because of it. And if you stop putting your skepticism in the way of your, your true, feelings for that person, you'll start to see that it is a very big problem, and it causes us to feel unsafe, unloved, and unappreciated at times. And especially when we're looking for that person to be an ally, and they turn in and dismiss what you're saying. So no, it's real. It's real, and you can play a part in helping make it.
Yeah. So that's good. I think it's easy to, when you're not involved in something, it doesn't affect you personally at the moment, then it's easy to be like, it doesn't really exist, or it's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be.
And that goes back to like last night we were saying, that when people try to say in a good way that all lives matter, we know. Yes, guys, we know all lives matter. Everybody's important. But when you say that, you still dismiss me in the fact that we know all lives matter. And I was telling Dave, it's just like if your house was on fire and you called the fire department and you said my house is on fire, and they told you, well, all houses matter, and they start pouring water on everybody else's house. Like, you don't need water on their houses right now. We need water on this house because this house is the one that's on fire right now. And if all lives matter, like you were saying, then Black lives do matter. So there's no argument to the statement.
Right. Exactly.
Just semantics.
I know for me, one of the when all that was kind of being debated, especially a few months ago, one of the things that really spoke to me was talking about a cancer patient. I would think, someone's diagnosed with cancer, and all cancers matter, but at that moment, if someone were to say to me that when my son was diagnosed, I would have probably wanted to smack him or something. But
because it affected you at that time. It was real to you. And other people, when it doesn't affect them, it's easy to dismiss. But you kind of have to have a little bit of empathy, put someone else's shoes on, and try to walk a little bit, and you'll find it's a little hard.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've got a question here. It says, we hear about white cops killing Black people. What about the statistics on black killing, like in Chicago? What's your thoughts on that?
So this is a tough one. There's been Black people have had marches about Black on Black violence for days, and it never gets put in the news. But you can, again, Google, look it up. We march against violence in our own communities all the time. But I'm going to say something that might sound controversial. Black on Black crime does not exist. I'm just going to say the murders and things you see in Chicago are crimes of proximity. If I live around Black people all the time, odds are if I kill someone, it's going to be someone I have a relationship with, which is probably going to be a Black person. No Black person on the face of this planet has killed another Black person because they're Black. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's usually a drug deal gone bad, you're on somebody's turf, or, you stole something that belonged to someone else and you were killed for it. Unfortunately, how wrong that is, it's wrong, but it's a crime of proximity. White people kill white people at a commensurate rate, but it is never called white on white crime. There's never anything called Asian on Asian crime or Latino on Latino crime. It's only Black on Black. And it's an invention to make it look like African Americans are just the most hostile race of people that there is. So please know that, yes, Chicago's a really big city, and that's where I am right now. It's a really big city. There are some wonderful African American communities in Chicago, very prosperous ones. But the media sensationalizes the inner city, the worst, And again, inner city is just another word for Black people. Urban's just another word for Black people. That's what they usually are referring to when they say those terms. But please know it's a crime of proximity, and the more people spread that, the more it becomes people's idea of truth, and it really isn't.
Right. I think you talk about I think the talking about the media and just kind of understanding. I think we all probably struggle with that, and what the media tells us versus what is reality, and trying to wrestle with that.
Definitely. Again, research for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The news will tell you what it needs to tell you, and they'll sensationalize it to make ratings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their job, to keep you hooked on that 24-hour cycle all day long. And they'll tell you it's breaking news when it's actually the same thing they told you yesterday, just with a new coat of paint. Just start looking for yourselves. Find unbiased news sources. That's why I don't do CNN. I don't do Fox. I don't do MSNBC. I try to kind of stick NPR-ish, because they kind of just give me the news and then they shut up, and that's it. And so I kind of like it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely do some research for yourself, and you'll come to find out a lot of things you think are true aren't as true as you thought. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice. Is there if anyone has any other questions? I think that's all I've got right now. I know someone asked about examples of oh wait, hold on, we got here's another one. The experience you were talking about that Black people share sounds to me like uniting forces, tying Black people together and not connecting with me. Hold on. I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. I have the perception that I need to do something to build bridges across the barriers, but I don't know how to handle that. So yeah, he's, I guess, trying to figure out, we don't want to go to, you said they're not our teachers, Black people aren't our teachers, and we want to connect with them. So, building bridges, and, I think that's a popular saying right now, right? The building bridges, and there's a couple books on that. So advice on how we can build bridges that maybe, especially as a church, I think as a predominantly white church, how can we build bridges with just not just a Black church, but just in general with the Black community and others?
We have all this technology. We have all this technology now, and I think it's a blessing that, and especially in this time where we can't get together in person, we can use it. You definitely do reach out to those Black churches. I mean, that's great. It's a great way to start. And then once we do that, and once things swing back up, I would say really start with like the youth programs. See if both churches have a youth program, and get together and have a youth day between both churches, where both churches experience each other, and just all around fun day. It doesn't even have to be anything too scripted, or now we have to have a sermon because everybody's here. Right, like, no, right. It could be just a water gun fight in the church playground, and let the kids talk, let the parents come together and start talking, and just let it be organic, and you'll find those people have just as much in common with you, and they love their children, they work their 9 to 5, they just want a great life, and then come home to nice dinner, and enjoy an evening just like you do, and then once that let it grow from there. I think a lot of times white people can feel like they have to undo the whole past of racism. You can't. Right. There's nothing that you're going to do to get rid of that. We know you can say, I don't own any, I didn't own any slaves. That's so long ago. We know that. And, or, my grandpappy didn't have any slaves. We didn't have anything. We were poor. Great. But just, you have to realize, unfortunately, and it is an uncomfortable thing to realize, that even if your family has no history of it, and even if they do, you have benefited from the system that was left behind and left in its wake. And once you realize that and see that there has been some unfairness because of it, commit to it ending with you. And as simple as that. Say, I understand I'm advantages in some ways, I'm privileged in some ways, but now let me use that privilege to advocate for somebody else. And so if you know somebody who's going up for a job, or even in your own church, or trying to get a position in your own church, advocate for them. Say something for them. If you know that person's a good person, say something for them. Because believe it or not, we need all the help we can get.
Right. Yeah. So, like, in lieu of was just kind of, are we supposed to hire, I guess, was that affirmative action? How does that compare to like affirmative action?
Don't hire someone because they're Black. Please. If they're terrible at what they do, they're terrible at what they do. If they're bad, they're bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that. I'm not
Yeah.
saying do that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know indeed they are qualified for the
Mm-hmm.
position that they've been called for or been asked to do,
Mm-hmm.
advocate for them, because unfortunately, and you can look at the statistics, uh, even if someone reads an application and can decide for themselves that the name sounds black, they were
Mm-hmm.
more than 70% more likely to choose the white name than the black
Mm-hmm.
name, just on name basis alone.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we deal with.
Yes.
70%. I can have, they just did another study where Hampton University, which is another black college,
Mm-hmm.
they made fake applications. The Hampton University student had all A's.
Mm-hmm.
The Harvard University student had a C+ grade average.
Hmm.
9 times out of 13 times, out of 13 people who picked between them, they chose the Harvard grad,
Oh, wow.
whose grades were terrible
Hmm.
for the job.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the name was something with Taniqua or something that sounded, real black.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guy was like Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And it was as simple as you could get, try to make it as, European sounding, as they could. And 9 out of 13 times they chose the Harvard grad. So advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Advocate when you see something unfair happening and you feel like, is this person not getting a fair shake? Say something, because it makes all the difference.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good. Someone else asked about reparations because of slavery.
We are the only country really who had a part in the slave trade that has not had some form of reparation. It's a scary notion because now the America is so mixed and it's such a melting pot. I mean, you come down to the question, who's owed? So for me, would I like to see reparations? I think for my father's sake and his father's sake, it would be a beautiful thing. But I don't hold my breath for it. I think what would make me happier would be that America issue a better apology, because I did feel a certain type of way that they had President Obama apologize for it. I mean, it's like, hey, black guy, you apologize for what we did to black people. Like, that makes sense. But I feel like America should just live up to the promise that it was created for. And I think that would be enough of a reparation. And to be honest about it, be honest about what is happening, be honest that we haven't lived up to it, and then commit to creating policies that would create a better America.
So just to start moving forward better, making better choices and
move forward better. It's just like the statues. Tear them down. I mean, your grandpappy, your great grandpappy, they don't know they're torn down. It's not going to make no difference to them. You can still remember that, but everything needs to be in its right context. And we need to start with the truth now. And once we lay it all out there and we have that truth, we can finally move forward. It's not going to say we're going to forget about it. It's like we don't forget about 9/11. We don't forget about Pearl Harbor. We're not going to forget about it. But because we remember it, we vow to do better. And I think that's where we need to be focused on.
Yeah, I think we talk about you shouldn't forget about these things. You shouldn't forget, about that. You shouldn't forget about the Holocaust. You shouldn't forget about 9/11. All these things. Those are things to remember so that we become better people.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions we've got for you. It's been great talking with you, man. I love you. And
love you, man.
Yeah. So is there anything I can pray for you right now before we head out?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Definitely my relationship with my fiance. Everything's good. Everything's good. But, just that we can make it through this COVID crunch together and, still as in love as we were before we went it. And just that that for my work, for my job, that I'm able to, have peace while I work, even with those, that may disagree and have different opinions on, race relations and things of that nature.
Okay. Well, let's pray. God, I thank you so much for this time together. I thank you for Marcus and him sharing his experience, his thoughts, his heart, Lord, in in his life and his experiences that you have uh, allowed him to go through, even tough things, Lord, that you've been at work in his life, God, and using those things to make him a better person, Lord. And we pray that you would help us as we listen to his story, as we try to engage with others, Lord, and just to expand our understanding and to not put things aside, but to really grow as individuals, as a church, as people of God, as fellow human beings, that we would grow in understanding and love and acceptance for people uh, who are very much ultimately like us. We are all created in your image, but they might not look like us, they may not act like us, but we are all your people, God. And we pray that you would just help us to see each other that way, Lord. I pray for Marcus and him and his fiancee Danielle, that they would have a just a great time planning this wedding. And even though it's been postponed, that you would just be with them, Lord. Help them weather the storm of COVID, and as the rest of us are trying as well. Be with him as he serves our country and cares for people in positions of power, Lord, and just maybe use him in those situations, just in conversations with others, that he could just share your love with people, even if they disagree. That they could, especially those who are also your children, that they could just come together and understand that we are all people created by you, God, and just give them the strength to endure and to continue moving forward, Lord. God, just watch over him now, Lord, and watch over all of us as we spend the rest of our days just working through each thing, Lord. Help us just to, as we hear issues, to just respond as you would want us to respond in a way that promotes your love and your grace and your compassion. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. It's good seeing you again. Definitely have to touch base again.
Thank you so much. It was a blessing to have all you guys here tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. Hope you all had a great time. If you have any other questions you want to send me sometime, I can pass them on to Marcus, or I could answer them pretending to be Marcus, or anything like that. So love you guys. Look forward to touching base with you guys again soon, and hopefully seeing you guys face to face in the near future.